Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name is Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. As I mentioned last week, we were getting our hay cut. It has now been baled, and Adam has started to move it out of the paddocks into just piles around so that we can then arrange for the people who are buying it to come and pick it up. Ideally, you want to try and move it out of the paddock as soon as you can so that you can clear the paddock so that you can get the grass to start growing again as quickly. And if you leave them sitting there, they obviously impede the grass from growing. We also need to clear one of the paddocks so that we can put the cows back in. We only have two cows, two pet cows, and they've been in with the horses for a little while we're getting the hay cut, but they can then go back into a paddock now. They don't do a huge amount of eating of grass when you consider the size of the paddock, so we're able to rotate them through and still be able to produce hay. In terms of yield for the hay, what we've done the last few years is we kind of have a bit of a family ballot, I guess you would call it. There's no real prize. What we all do is we just try and get closest to the number of overall hay bales for the year. So we get a rundown of what was last year for each paddock, and then we need to give an overall number of what we think it will be for the next one. So we didn't think that our yield was going to be that great this year. It's been, well, for 2025, I guess you would say. It has been really dry, what you would call a green drought. Our dams emptied out, and the grass didn't grow all that long. And we waited a really long time to get it cut because then, right over that Christmas New Year period, we got some rain. So we had to wait for it to dry out again. So we were concerned that overall we'd end up with a much lower yield across all of the paddocks. And as it was getting cut, you could see we have three paddocks. We call one of the paddocks One Tree Hill because it's a hill with one big pine tree on top of it. The dam paddock because that's where our big dam is. And we call the other one the finger post paddock because there used to be a sign in the paddock that had a finger pointing to around the corner. So I think most farmers or people on property end up sort of calling different areas of their farm different things, and that's sort of what we call our farm. We also have an area across the bush that we call the footy oval, and it is definitely not a footy oval, but it's sort of like an oval shape that's clear, that's in our bush area. That's sort of a very distinct part of that side of the creek. So we kind of figured going in that the One Tree Hill paddock was going to be quite light on. It just didn't look thick or long or anything. And when it got cut, there were hardly any piles. Like the in the original cut, it didn't look very deep, but the other paddocks looked okay. Um, so then after it was raked and baled, we went around and did a count. Deb and Adam drove around and counted, and after each paddock, they gave us a little video update and then announced the overall winner, which wasn't me, so we won't go into the details on who won, who cares. So, for those playing along at home, if you're interested, last year we had 172 bales, and this current yield of hay was 174, which is so surprising. And part of that is One Tree Hill was terrible. It was down 20 bales from the previous year. The dam paddock was only down a few bales, but the finger post paddock, we got 55 bales out of that paddock compared to 28 last year. So huge difference. Part of that was Adam had slashed that last year, as in 2024, in around October, I think. No, September, October. But then it still was enough to get hay from it. And also, my mum and I had been working really hard on getting rid of all of the weeds out of that paddock. So we had done a lot of blackberry spraying, and we'd also sprayed the broom, which is a weed that grows and takes up quite a bit of space. And Mum had also spent some time actually digging some of those broom plants out. So it really opened up the amount of space we had and made sure that we had some really good pasture to cut in there. So they are our hay results for 2025-26. One thing I still really need to do here around the shed is do some proper gardening. Before I went away on my cruise holiday, the garden was reasonably neat and tidy. I'd done some pruning. I had weeded the path, and it was looking really nice. I came back after those 8-9 days away, and it's grown wild. There are weeds over the path. All of the garden beds have been taken over. And I think that was because we got that crazy bit of cooler rain weather over that period. And now it's just been too hot to be able to get out there and do anything significant to actually fix that problem. So I am going to have to spray the path on a not windy day and get in and do some pulling of weeds and cut everything back again. So I'm really disappointed. And I know gardens, you can't, you have to keep working on them. You can't just like leave them and everything's fine. But yeah, I felt like I had been really prepared and been ahead of it in terms of making sure that I'd done that work before I went away. And it is just, you can't even tell. It's just all grown back and grown back worse. So, and particular weeds that only come out at this time of year as well. So interesting. Plenty of work to do there. I am back at work this past week. No students yet. They come back after the long weekend. So on Tuesday, they will return. So this week has just been getting back into the routine of it all, catching up on everyone's holidays and what's been going on, and making lists and getting things organised for when everyone comes back properly next week. So I have been a little bit more tired this week, and clearly not as much time over here in the shed or just to sit and knit as I had the past 4 or 5 weeks while I was on holiday. I think the hardest bit has just been getting up that little bit earlier in the morning. I'm not a person who sleeps in a whole lot, but just that little bit earlier and having to actually get up with an alarm rather than getting up when you wake up is just, that's the thing that I'm struggling with this past week and these last few days particularly. I've been a little bit slower to get out of bed. So I'm hoping that the long weekend gives me a little bit of a recharge and then be ready to go. And I'm sure I will. I'm enjoying being back at work. It's just that getting up early in the morning that's not the best. I haven't done any more dyeing this past week. It has been, as I said, back to work. And also, so then in the afternoons, it's been quite warm over here. I do plan to try and get a little bit done this coming weekend if I can. I actually already have an idea for a Christmas colorway, which I want to try and test out early so that I can make any adjustments if I need to, and also have time to do some proper sampling to be able to show you all what it will look like. Last year, it was quite late before I came up with my Christmas idea. So I'm actually really excited that I already have something in mind to try out. And I haven't seen it done before. So, I mean, the colors will be Christmassy colors to a point. But in terms of the dye style and what I'm thinking I'm going to try and do, I'm hoping will look a little bit different and interesting, especially when you end up making something with it. So stay tuned for that. Although, having said that, I won't be able to share that with you until probably September or October. I've also updated my website with all of the markets that I have been accepted into for this coming year. I will leave the link below to my events and markets page so that you can find out all of those details. So I will be at the Mooroolbark Handicraft and Wool Show. I will be at the new Geelong and Bellarine Yarn Show. I will be at quite a few of the All About Fibre and yarn markets, which are located throughout Victoria. And there could be a few more to confirm. I've applied for a couple more and I'm just waiting to hear back. So all of those details will be available on my website, and you can check out the calendar to see where I will be and where those events are. First, to what I'm wearing this week. This is one of the grassland tanks that I made. I made two of these, and this is the first one. I'll leave the details below so that you can check it out. I have spoken about this top many times as I made it, which was at the start of last year. Now to my crafting. I'm going to start with spinning this week. Over the summer holiday, I got a little bit of spinning done, and I'm working on another braid right now, which is on my wheel. I don't actually know what the tag or the maker or the dyer behind this one was, and I'm not going to mention it if I find the details either, because the blue did run quite a bit when I soaked this. So I don't want to give a bad impression of that dyer. It could have just been that particular batch. So it was coming off on my hands, just the blue, when I was spinning it. And I thought it just might have been crocking, which is where the excess dye just comes off on your hands a little bit. And it happens sometimes with store-bought yarn as well. And then I applied it. This is a 2-ply, and it's about it's thick and thin. I'm still not very good at spinning, and I don't do it enough to have been getting too consistent. But I guess it's around somewhere between a sport weight and a DK. But yeah, the blue, I then put it into, but it is pretty balanced. Look at that. So I put it into some water to soak it so that I could set the twist and get it so that it was beautiful like this. And immediately the water turned blue. And I'm like, oh no, all of these other beautiful colors are going to end up all muddied because they're going to end up with the blue all over them, or the blue's going to come out and then it's going to look all like weird and faded. So I immediately put a pot onto one of my burners here in the shed. I put quite a lot of vinegar in the water, and I put this in and I let it come up to temperature, and then I left it overnight. And when I came back the next day, the water was clear again, and I rinsed it and none of the blue was running anymore. So huge tip for you. If you do notice ever that any of your yarn is running, either as yarn or when you've got it in a garment you've already made, firstly, don't use strong detergents. And then second, as soon as you see any color in the water, my recommendation would be to put it into a pot of water, start on cold, put quite a bit of vinegar in, like a cup of vinegar, put your garment or your yarn into that, and bring it up until you don't want it to boil. You just want tiny little bubbles on the bottom and to see steam coming off it. Pop the lid on, turn it off, and leave it to stay overnight until that water is cold. And that water should then be clear. And when you then run your garment or your yarn under cold water, it should run clear. So a little tip for you if that ever happens, so that you don't end up with things changing color that shouldn't. So yeah, so this is my latest yarn. I need to start making things with my hand spun, but I don't really know what I'd make. Maybe a beanie or something. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. And as I said, I've started on something else on my wheel. Maybe going to try a chain ply with that one, and maybe try and knit some socks. All right, now to my knitting. Stupidly, last week, I completely forgot to talk about my Love Cardigan that I finished over the holidays. I spoke about it a lot at the end of last year. I was modifying the pattern so that there was no texture on it. It was just going to be a long jacket in the same style as the Love Cardigan, but with colors fading from one to the next. I was making it out of 4 colors of Dizzy Devil yarns. They're a company from Tasmania, and it was the Geo Funk kit. Like, it came as a little bag with the different colors, and I was using some hand dyed yarn from Robin of the Unwind Craft Cafe for the transitional colors in between, because they were nice pastel colors that I thought went quite well. So I have finished it. The ends are woven in. I've snipped it all, and today is too hot to actually show it to you on. I do have some video that I will pop in to share. But here it is. I think last time I showed you, I was just beginning the sleeves, and I needed to get new needle tips in order to finish it. So I got some shorter tipped 3.75 millimeter needles so that I could knit in the round. In the end, because of the size of the cables that I had, I decided, and moving the whole big piece around, I decided that I would actually knit the 2 sleeves concurrently rather than at the same, like on the same cable. So I would do one sleeve down to the transition, and then I would do the next sleeve down to the transition, and then I would switch back and forth between them, counting the number of rows, and where there were when making sure that if I did a decrease on one, I would then put that one down, knit up to where I needed to do the decrease on this one, do the decrease, and then uh, keep going, so that I did not end up with completely different sleeves. Because what I find that I do is that I forget to count or mark when I do things, and then I have to really go back and examine the sleeve to see where I need to either do a decrease or how many rows I need to do. So I was trying to make it easier for myself, without having to do a ton of thinking. So it's got a shawl collar. It's got some really lovely detail along the shoulder, and then it's a drop sleeve. As you can see, it matches really well the colors on the body and the sleeve. I did an I-cord bind off for the cuffs and for the bottom hem. I did a lot less decreases on the sleeve than the pattern called for. I like my sleeves to be quite loose, and I find that my arm doesn't really change in terms of its width between the top and probably to about here somewhere, and then it gets quite narrow at my wrist. So I decided to not do a whole ton of decreases up here, or it was going to end up being much too tight. I completely ran out of this first transition color. In the end, I think there is like half a row different. Like, there's this sleeve is not exactly the same as this sleeve. I think this one's got like one less stripe on it, but if you're looking that close, you probably don't need to be there, you know. So I think that will be totally fine. I still have a little bit of each of the others, as well as a little bit of each of the main colors, but in terms of the amount of yarn that this used up, I was really pleased, and I am now looking forward to it being a little bit cooler, so that this can be something that I can throw on as like a jacket coat kind of piece. And yeah, it was a joy to knit from start to finish. I really, really loved it. Love the yarn, love the colors, and this is a pattern that I will go back to again for making a cardigan, because it's the kind of fit that I really like. So yeah, finally able to share my Love Cardigan with you. Next up is my Evina cardigan. Last week I had finished all of the crochet squares, and this week I spent some time joining them all together. So here they are in their strip. That's quite a severe looking stripe of color there, but in real life it's actually doesn't look that obvious. But anyway, so there are all of the strips joined, and I've started to do the bottom ribbing. So I've picked up stitches along this edge down here. So they're all mattress stitched together, which took quite a while. And then, yeah, I've started to do the ribbing at the bottom. I think I've got it's supposed to be about probably about double what it is now. And then I pick up along here and do the yoke. So it is, I think, going to be a little bit large on me, which is okay. I don't mind having like an oversized, large kind of cardigan, as you can see from the one that I've just finished. But I think part of the that is obviously your crochet squares have to be a particular size, and if you go down, if you cut out a whole other square, then it would be too small, but doing like another full square is making it a little bit large. But I think once it's all put together, it will be really great. So that is that. I'm using my own hand dyed yarn. This is a new base that I'm trying out. It is a brushed merino 8-ply, and that is a new colorway that I'm also trying. So it's sort of a light pink with sort of tan kind of neutral pops through. Yeah, so that has been good, and I'm sort of missing doing the crochet part, to be honest, but now onto the knitting. But because it's now already a really large thing, I haven't had it on my lap this past week. I have been working on my other project, which is the tank top that I am using this silk yarn for, that I showed you last week that I had finished and then ripped out because it was going to be too short. So I'm using I think it's called the Humler, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, top pattern. And but I'm just using that for the numbers. It does have lace on the yoke, and I'm not doing the lace. I had cast on for the second size, but I've actually gone down to the smallest size, and I am redoing the whole thing again. I've tried this on and it still fits just fine. The shoulders before came down quite a way, so these ones kind of sit a bit higher up, which is actually what I wanted. And the neck is open, but not as open as it was before. I have done a few rows of garter at the top of this. I'm hoping that it will block out to be reasonably straight. I don't mind if it curls a little bit, but at the moment it kind of curls quite a bit, which is fine if it does. When it sits on it, it's still really comfortable. I don't mind how that sits. So I don't even know where I was up to last week. I've got a lifeline in because I had knit a bit further down. I think I'd done to about there. And then I realized that the colors were pooling quite a bit. So what I did is put a lifeline in back up here and ripped it back, so to just below the sleeve split. And I tried to do just pulling from either end of the ball and doing one row in one, and then continue like sort of like helical, one of one and then one of the other. But that just made it look like stripes rather than like it was intended to be. So what I've done now is I went back again. It's still pooling a little bit, and it's interesting that the colors are kind of still stacking the same way, but I'm now doing 2 rows of one and then 2 rows of the other. And look, it's not going to be perfect. It actually looks much darker than the top. There's a lot more white up here, but it's pooling a lot less than it was before. And the pooling's kind of traveling rather than staying stacked on top of each other. So yeah, it actually looked much better at the bigger gauge. That wasn't happening after I split for the sleeves last time, but I was never going to wear it because it was too short. So I'm going to have to deal with the slightly more um, pooling colors that it's producing because of that smaller stitch gauge. Um, Hopefully now I'm going to have enough yarn to finish the body how I want it to be finished. If it doesn't work this time, the whole thing will come out and it might become a scarf or something instead, because I don't think I want to knit it again. But at the moment, I am just still really enjoying this. Has been my come home from work and just sit and knit in the round without thinking. It's light, there's not much to it, so I can just have it on my lap in the air conditioning. And yeah, hopefully I will have it finished to show you next week. That's kind of my aim. As I said, I've done quite a lot, because if you think about this, I actually knit down, ripped back, and then I ripped down, knit more, and then ripped back. So this is probably it probably should be about this much longer at least than what it actually is, given the amount of work that I had put into it that's not currently in the project. Does that make sense? Um, So yeah, should get a lot more work the next few days while it's hot and I can sit inside and work on it. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.